Now time to welcome to the program New York Times bestselling author and columnist who you can read online at AnnCoulter.com. Ann Coulter. Ann, thanks so much for joining us.
Absolutely, John Phillips. You're incapable of getting fat. If you were a girl, everyone would hate you.
Well, I'm trying my best, that I can tell you. There's so much that just pisses me off related to this entire coronavirus thing, because not only am I on house arrest and I'm crawling the walls, but I'm looking at what these various people in government are doing, and they're trying to exploit this to promote whatever agenda it was that they had before the virus. I want to play two pieces of sound for you and have you react to them. The first one is Tom Steyer, the failed Enviro sugar daddy who ran for president and got exactly 2 votes, who is now running California's committee to reopen the state. Listen to what he had to say about how he envisions his role in that committee.
So at this point, let me just read the mission statement of what is called, and it's a mouthful, the Governor's Task Force on Business and Jobs Recovery. To develop a strategy to help California recover as fast as safely possible from the COVID-19 induced recession and to create a fair, green, and prosperous future. We will bring together Californians from the public and private sectors and from communities across our state. We will develop a plan that works for all Californians with a particular focus on those hardest hit by the pandemic. Let me say, we have brought together some of the best minds, as Gavin said, in the state to develop a recovery plan. But we will also be reaching out to people across the state, whether those are activists or experts, labor or environment, community groups or philanthropists.
So it's going to be a bunch of environmentalists and a bunch of labor people and a bunch of community organizers getting together to try to turn California into the Green New Deal. So that's the first one. The second one is a councilman in Los Angeles, Mike Bonin, who theoretically represents Venice, but in actuality he represents the bums. He is giddy at the prospect that people are going to lose their homes and that hotels are going to be forced into bankruptcy, so the city can go in and buy them for pennies on the dollar and give them to the homeless.
I also intend on putting in another proposal in the next week or two that asks the city to look at the federal bailout or stimulus funds that we'll be getting as a result of this crisis, and hopefully the federal government will be stepping up with a lot more, and using some of that to either buy hotels that go belly up, or use that to buy the distressed properties that are absolutely going to be on the market at cheaper prices after this crisis is over, and use that as homeless and affordable housing. It's going to be a hell of a lot cheaper if we purchase stuff that is already there and move people in quickly than if we start from scratch.
And then you have the governor of California, Gavin Newsom, who can't wait to spend whatever tax dollars are still rolling into Sacramento on illegal aliens. What do you make of all of this?
I'm sure the homeless will do wonderful things with their new homes. Maybe it will finally expose that these are not just, oh, I fell on hard times, lost my job. These are drug addicts and the mentally ill, and this is a cruel way to treat them. Don't think they'll actually be doing a lot with those new homes they get. But yeah, you're absolutely right. And the overarching thing the government wants to do is boss us around. It's such an odd thing. I was just talking to someone who was citing another person relatively big in the television industry who had, thought, and his blinding insight was, the person Donald Trump reminds me of, Adolf Hitler. And my friend, who's no more, a huge fan of Trump's than I am, and in fact quite a bit less probably, he said to the guy, really, where do you get that? I mean, come on, just think about it. There's a lot wrong with Trump. Utter narcissist, never follows through, just wants the immediate reaction. mostly promoting Ivanka and Jared, and hasn't kept any of his campaign promises. There's loads to say, but I mean, he can't even fire somebody on his own. He has to retweet somebody telling him he should fire Fauci or fire Sessions or fire Bannon. He can't even do that. And so we're not really getting it from him, but what the government mostly wants to do, other than, Adolf Hitler, Donald Trump, is control us, dominate us, boss us around. I think everybody was fine with maybe I'm wrong about this. It sucked, but everybody was fine with the 2-week stay-at-home order. The Chinese sent us this monstrous virus. Got to flatten the curve, keep people safe. We don't really know who it's hitting yet, although we had a pretty good idea, and it's only been borne out by the evidence that it's really mostly just a danger for the elderly and the immunocompromised. There's been very little evidence to contradict that. I mean, a certain number of young people die of the flu every year. They do. I know of some, or get pneumonia or something. But it's mostly the people it is knocking out, which we've known from the beginning, elderly, immunocompromised. But once they start extending that 2 weeks into 3 weeks, 4 weeks, talking about extending it through the entire summer, perhaps through the entire year, and you have that lunatic governor of Michigan who's now telling people, just to stay in their home. They can only go out with family members. Well, we've also had study after study coming in saying to reduce the transmission of this Wuhan flu, you need sunshine, fresh air. There's no evidence right now. Doors. So what's the government's policy? Stay inside. Don't leave your home. Don't go into warm weather. Don't walk on the beach. And the lunatic governor of Michigan even taking it farther. Now she's shutting down the sales of these big box stores like I guess Walmart and Costco, where they have grocery stores and pharmacies. Well, the whole store is allowed to be open. So when you're under lockdown, you could go in and get other things, scrapbooking or carpeting or gardening materials. Nope. The garden center has to be cordoned off. This is what the government likes to do. And if you're looking for fascism, it is a lot of these Democratic governors. It bears no relationship to anything we know about this virus. In fact, the evidence is going the other way in terms of being outdoors and in terms of it not particularly being a problem for younger, healthy people. But no, we're just going to shut everything down because we want to control you. We can do it, so we're going to say that's the science. That's the science. That's the science. No, it's not the science, but it is your nature.
Well, I'll tell you this, and there's a lot of blame that should be given to these governors who are doing all these insane things. But they're just lemmings who are taking the advice and the guidance from the news media, who is just absolutely hair on fire about this. And I am of the belief that if the news media broadcast from Atlanta instead of New York City, this would barely be a blip on the screen. It's a real problem in the tri-state area for New York, New Jersey, Connecticut. And they are experiencing certainly more people dying from this virus than the other parts of the country and people contracting this virus. But if they were in Atlanta, they wouldn't care. But because they're in New York, they want to run Wyoming the same way that they're running New York. And if you don't subscribe to that, then you're Alex Jones.
Yes, and again, they are behaving in ways that are oppressive and yet contrary to the science. One of the main ways the virus is transmitted is public transportation. I mean, in addition to the temperate weather in California, and most parts of California certainly nicer than, New York City right now, I think, is around 42 degrees and raining, and it's going to be like that all week. California doesn't have very much public transportation. No one will mention that because public transportation is, that's a wet dream of the left. They want all of us, piling on and all facing the same direction like good North Koreans, all moving at the same speed. And at least we saved the earth. But you'll note, that certainly seems to have a lot to do with why New York has been, the New York environs have been hit so hard. small apartments, people crowded together in small apartments, people crowded together on public transportation. It's the only way to get around a city of 11 million, what is it, 10 million, 8 million? I think it's 8 million people. And all confined on one tiny little island. People take the subway. They have to take the subway. If we didn't have our economy so tightly integrated with that of China, where they eat wild animals and sell them in wet markets, this wouldn't be a problem. Subway's actually usually pretty great, disgusting, and you can pick up leprosy, but really great in terms of transportation and getting you around the city fast.
Well, and that's what they want to do to California. Even though we're built horizontally instead of vertically, they want us to get rid of our cars, they want us on the bus, they want us on trains that don't exist, and they want us to live above a 7-Eleven. And people who live in California like their single-family homes. We like our pools, we like our yards, we like our cars, and we don't want people living on top of us. And if we did, we'd probably all be contracting the virus too.
That's right. That's right, but they won't mention that. No, they tell New Yorkers to stay out of the parks. Though, again, I don't think there's a single proved case of this virus being transferred out of doors. And there have been studies of this. I tweeted one, last week, a massive study of how, of the locations, the venues where the virus was transferred. And there was overlap, but it was something like, these percentages are roughly correct, 70%, 74%, something like that, indoors, 37%, again, there was overlap, on public transportation. And how many cases were transferred outside? Zero. So the government's position is, it's the science. Stay inside. Don't go outdoors. No, the science is exactly the opposite, proving all you want to do is boss us around and keep us all home and make us take public transportation.
Well, if you want to be a stickler on the science said that we should have shut down travel from China a long time before we did. I mean, we were one of the first ones to do it. But as far as I'm concerned, we should have done it before we did
2017.
We should have done it with Europe, too, when Italy was going
20th.
bonkers.
Yeah, January 20, what's inauguration dates around in there? Okay, so let's we'll give them a few days to write it up along with the Muslim ban. A total world ban by January 30th, 2017. Well, you'll see, I just posted a column today. I mean, it's kind of been driving me crazy. That I feel like I have to bite my tongue over what a complete disaster Donald Trump has been. Why? Because consider the alternative. And I think you're going to have to be considering up close and personal come next January. But be that as it may, as with everything else, the media won't attack Trump for what he's really guilty of. They want to run off and attack him for something he's bulletproof on. Oh, you didn't shut down the country when there were 0 deaths in this country, when the media was busy talking about impeaching you. Can you imagine if he had come out and started talking about a viral pandemic and everybody stay home in the middle of the impeachment trial? But as with this entire presidency, no, a lot of blame can be laid at Trump's feet for lying to his supporters, making all kinds of promises on China. He's going to stop China from raping us and bring manufacturing home, and he's going to shut down these H-1B visas. Remember that whole thing about the Disney World workers? That was a big part of his campaign, that Disney down in Florida was bringing in for their tech workers foreigners on the H-1B visa and making the Americans train their cheap foreign replacements. Because there are no Americans to do these jobs. That's why we need foreigners. Well, then how come they have to be trained by Americans? It was obviously BS. It was a fantastic campaign issue. Only Trump would talk about it. But unfortunately, then he got elected. He didn't tell us, and I'm going to turn over my administration to Jared, Ivanka, and Gary Cohn. And that's what he did. They told him, no, don't impose tariffs on China. For 2 years, no tariffs. For actually this whole time, this same number of Chinese students have been pouring into American universities. The same number of H-1B workers pouring in, taking jobs. And as the LA Times reported yesterday, Norman Matloff, the computer programming professor at University of California, Texas, Texas Davis, who writes a lot about this and what a scam the H-1B visa is. It's just a way of underpaying Americans and keeping Americans unemployed in the tech industry. And he pointed out, the area in the Bay Area that's been hit hardest? Silicon Valley. And we found out in the LA Times yesterday the first 2 cases of the Wuhan flu in America were in Silicon Valley. That can be laid at Trump's feet. He made promises on China, and he kept them just as well as he kept his promises on immigration. That he should be blamed for, but the media won't mention that.
Well, and here's what's going to happen as soon as the presidential campaign kicks off, or at least as soon as people start paying attention to it. Joe Biden is going to attack him for shutting travel down from China and Italy, and he's going to say that what he's been saying, that it was based in racism, not in science, and it doesn't work, and everything else that we've heard ad nauseum for weeks and weeks and weeks. And his chief medical advisor, Dr. Ezekiel Emanuel, is saying that we're going to have to shut the country down for a year to a year and a half. That is going to be where the criticism is going to be coming from.
Well, I may be a little less pessimistic on Trump's chances for re-election if Biden's campaign promise is going to be keeping the country shut down for the next 2 years. He may have to move Ezekiel out of the campaign. Just edge him off to the side. You just keep going on MSNBC, but stay away from the campaign.
What do you think Biden's going to do? Because Biden right now he's doing these TV interviews where he doesn't make any sense. He looks like someone who has dementia. He looks like someone who's losing his marbles. He's doing these friendly interviews on CNN and MSNBC where they're spoon-feeding him the questions, and he's reading the questions from a tablet, and he's stumbling his way through them. Who he picks as his vice presidential nominee is going to be important for him.
Yep.
He says it's going to be a woman, and he's looking at that governor of Michigan, and I'm thinking to myself, are you completely insane? Are you trying to lose the election? Let's shut the world down for a year and a half and pick a lunatic to be the VP.
Well, that's what I think, but what are his options? It was so stupid of him to announce that it's definitely going to be a woman. Kind of narrows the field down. There's Elizabeth Warren, there's Kamala Harris, there's Stacey Abrams, who's campaigning like mad for the position. There's Amy Klobuchar. I'd say his best bet would be Amy Klobuchar. And just, word to the wise, no matter how smart and normal a Democrat may seem, and Amy Klobuchar is smart and seems very normal, she's going to hire the exact same people that Bernie Sanders would have. She and Joe Biden will have the exact same staffers. You're going to get the exact same ridiculous policies. But I don't know, it just wouldn't be quite as frightening having a smart, normal person. And I do think whomever Biden chooses as his vice president, not only is it important, I think that's the person who's going to be the president, maybe in less than 4 years, looking at Biden these days. I also still think it's possible, though they may not need to do this. The media, as you say, may be able to carry Biden through. But I still maintain it's possible that the Democrats come up with a way to do a little switcheroo on Joe Biden and insert somebody else in there.
Well, they've done that before. Go back to that U.S. Senate race in New Jersey.
New Jersey.
Yes. When Bob Torricelli was running for re-election, and everyone finally came to the realization at once that the guy was a complete crook, and all the polls showed that he was going to lose the election to a Republican. And they found some loophole to take his name off the ballot. The loophole was
they ignored the law. It was completely against the law, New Jersey law, their own rules. It was against New Jersey law. So they take it to a New Jersey judge, and the New Jersey judge said, oh, no, that's okay. You can break the law. You're the Democrats.
In California,
that really is what happened. They'll figure out a way to do it if they think they'll have a better chance with somebody else. But they may also think, it doesn't matter. Everybody's forgotten about Biden. This is the best thing that could happen to him. He's down in his basement. We'll just keep this Chinese flu thing going for a few more months. Everyone will remember Biden from 20 years ago. We'll show old clips of him, and we'll use the coronavirus to make sure there are no live debates.
So you think they're going to go full-on Weekend at Bernie's?
Yes, and this pandemic is helping them out. They don't even have to admit, no, it's because we're running a guy who sounds like Bob Mueller. They just say, oh, that's irresponsible of you. No, we can't have live debate. What, are you going to have a studio audience? Maybe they'll have a debate the same way they did with the last debate between Biden and Sanders. Remember, that was after the shutdown order came, and they just, sat on chairs, and first a member of the news media, i.e. a communist, interviews Sanders, and then a member of the news media, i.e. a communist, interviews Biden. That's not exactly Trump's format.
Now, what's going to happen? Just how are people going to process this? Because I could see it going one of two ways. Because you look at Biden on TV, and if you're non-political or even if you're to the left, it's obvious that the guy is not well and he's lost his marbles, or is at least in the process of losing his marbles. Do people look at that and they say, oh God, we can't let this invalid go anywhere near the red button? Or do people have sympathy for him, and does he start getting sympathy votes?
That's a good question. I think there may be a third option, which is, I think, largely the option that people chose when it came to Donald Trump. It wasn't, I think there were a lot of people, you and me included, although more you than me, who were more worried about Trump.
Well, I was scared to death because of what Schwarzenegger did to us.
Yes, boy, were you right, except worse. And I think part of remember, Trump had the luxury of running against Hillary Clinton, one of the most hated people in America. I won't even, limit it to most hated women. One of the most hated people. We've hated her since it was the 2-for-1 with Bill Clinton, since she did the Tammy Wynette thing, since she, said it was a vast right-wing conspiracy that made up Monica Lewinsky, since she tried to socialize healthcare in that ham-handed fascistic way of hers. She has been hated. Millions of Americans have been hating her for 20, 30 years. So I think a lot of them sort of took the position that, don't even tell me about the other guy. I don't want to know. I just want to vote for whomever is not Hillary. And I think there are probably a fair number of people who are thinking that now with Trump. Not even necessarily because of Trump himself, although there's plenty to dislike there. But because of the media, chaos, hysteria, impeachment, every day it's a constitutional crisis. This is, if it's not the end of the beginning, it's the beginning of the end. All these cliches we have to get about the world is coming to an end every night. It's not normal. It's not normal. And I think people, unlike us, that tends to gin up people like you and me. But normal people, independents, people who aren't political nuts, I think they see that and think, just make it stop. Where do I sign?
Have you ever seen the movie The Last Hurrah starring Spencer Tracy?
No.
You would love it. You've got to see it, and since you're on house arrest, you've got plenty of time. But it's based on the Edwin O'Connor book, and it's essentially about Mayor Curley in Boston. And the whole thing is about his last run for mayor of Boston. And he was governor, and he was congressman, and he was mayor for a bunch of terms. He did every job that you could possibly do in Massachusetts and was super popular. And he was old, and he was starting to lose it a little bit, and he decided he was going for one last race, one last hurrah, and he was going to just end his career that way. And not to spoil the ending, but the whole book is about that campaign and about how this beloved figure who was larger than life would campaign, and people realized, oh my God, this guy has lost it. This guy has lost a step. Even though we love him, we can't vote for him. And he lost an unlosable race because of it. And I just look at Joe Biden, and I think of the last hurrah, as he's going to go around doing these interviews, participating in the debates, doing the convention, and it will just be in your face all the time, and you will have to acknowledge that the guy, even if you like him or agree with them, is just not capable.
Oh my gosh, you're right. They are going to have to cancel the debates and the convention.
Yeah, if he's going to win, they're going to have to cancel all of that.
They could do it. That's part of the reason we're getting this nonstop hysteria.
All right. Ann, it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much for stopping by today. And go read Ann's column at anncoulter.com and follow her on Twitter at Ann Coulter. Love you, Ann.
Bye-bye.